Okay, so the second Grisaille study is a little more complicated. Um, it's drapery for one. Drapery has some unique qualities. And we're also going to be doing the Imprimatura and the Grisaille in the same week. So we're going to be working on it pretty quickly. And so by the end of this week, you'll have two Grisaille studies completed, and they should be drying over next week. Next week, we're going to be working on color. And then the week after that, we're going to start applying color to our work. Okay, so for this study, I want you to download the image, which is Grisaille number 2, the drapery image. Looks like this. This is what you're going to be working off. So you're going to take your first stage, you're going to work through the imprimatura just like we did with the first study. Now with drapery, one of the tricks is just try to think of it in terms of shapes. There's this kind of rectangular shape, this is sort of triangular. And so break it into pieces and use the lines that separate the lights and darks to guide you. Okay, so for instance, you're going to just break it down into a geometry of shapes. You're going to have the main lines. You're not going to go into any of these sort of details and shadows and things like that. We want to just get the main lines defined and get a rough sense of the shape of the overall object. Now, one of the things that's going to help you with this is something called sight lines. So if you look at this line here, this is the horizontal sight line that hits the bottom center of the drapery. And notice everything is above it, including this corner right here. So when you make your sketch, you want to be looking at these kinds of lines. And they're all over the place. You have to decide which ones for you are useful and which ones are not particularly useful. You could maybe make a sight line here with this angle and see if this lines up, which it does, so then you'd come over and make sure your drawing has that. But other ones might be like this line here, coming down, and then it hits this fold right there, and then it kind of lines up a little bit there. So we put that line in, you can see this is all kind of a diagonal. And so again, you want to make sure that that's present in your drawing. And maybe another diagonal here that sort of lines up with this last piece there. So if we come and look at this, we see, yeah, they sort of do line up. So think in terms of these lines, in terms of the shapes. Get out of your head the idea that it's a piece of drapery. Think of it as an abstract painting or an abstract sculpture, and all you're trying to do is capture the shapes that you see. And so with that, you'll then start to develop it just a little bit more. Put the shapes of the shadows in. We get this sort of the triangles here and the triangle there and that kind of wiggly line. You got the darks happening in here. You have an upside down triangle here. So you'll see there's triangles all over the place in this photograph. So try and just hint at them. And like the previous study, we're not going to get too bogged down with details right now. And then we'll take this into the Grisaille phase. Okay, so again, you start exactly the same as we did with the Grisaille in the first study. You're just basically blocking in. You're putting this is kind of a lighter gray. This is a darker gray. This is a darker gray, a lighter gray. And you're just kind of breaking everything down into pieces, a patchwork quilt, a jigsaw puzzle, just so you can kind of see relationships between things, put your shadows in, and then you just start to refine this. You take it to the next step and the next stage. Okay, so one of the things with drapery we want to look for is this right here. This we saw in the PowerPoint on tone. This is the reflected light, and this is the core shadow. If you look over here, you see it. Now, obviously, this is a little thicker because this painting's not finished. This is very, very thin, but remember what I said in the last presentation about exaggerating. You can make it a little bit stronger if you want. And if you look at the drapery, you're going to see that everywhere. See, there's a core shadow right there, and underneath it is reflected light, and then we get the dark cast shadow underneath that. You could even make it out barely here. And so look around, you'll see them everywhere. Here's your cast shadow, your core shadow. On the right side of that is reflected light, and then on the right side of that is the piece of drapery in the back. So we're going to want to put that in here. We're going to want to put it here. We're going to put it there. These are real subtle issues, but they're well worth keeping an eye out for and trying to put in because they really give you a sense of the drapery and the feel of the drapery. Okay, and then finally, This would be taking it, far enough before we get into the color stage. So you've got your lights, your darks. Again, you've got your core shadow here, the core there. You're getting your core and reflected light here. Cast shadows on the table. So, look at the details. Try and put them in there. Again, this is practice for trying to see and understand the values of the image. But we're not taking this to full completion. The example that I showed you this week, the painting by Ong, the Odalisque, those Grisaille stages done by academic painters took weeks, if not months, and maybe even in some cases a year. They were meticulously done, and this kind of painting takes a long time. We don't have that luxury, so don't worry about getting everything completely finished. Okay? Get it as far as you can so it looks good, so you've gone through all the major shapes of lights and darks, and then we'll be ready to take it to the next step.